So, who are you and what do you do?
I am happy to be asked this question. It keeps me present in the moment. Greetings, everyone. I am Orland Bishop, um, and this is being recorded here at my home in Los Angeles. My interest has been around healing, the human being recovering the capacity to balance the inner and outer world realities. And more so the social healing process whereby between human beings we can resolve and transform conflicts and develop deeper and ever deeper levels of agreements to be able to hold the futures that are emerging through our social, spiritual, and natural developmental processes. So my interest was to take the understanding of the human being and put it into social processes for development. And I've been working in that field for the last 25 years. And I'm the director of Shetri Multicultural Foundation, a social initiative dedicated to helping young people to utilize these principles of human development.
And what do you understand moral technologies to be?
But technology, first, are ways by which the human being utilize the will to create change. The earliest knowledge had to do with using powers of the mind to create change. So we always had to, we were always required to have a principled way by which we develop the mind. When we think back into human history, human beings had to create the very faculties now that we use to create systems in the world. But the first creative act that we engage with our powers of creativity had to do with creating the self. And the mind is a creative field, a created field by human intelligences and intelligences beyond the human realm where we are inspired to know about certain other possibilities of life outside of ourselves. But moral technology could be understood by as a process by which we take hold of powers and direct it with moral faculties. Faculties of heart, the faculties of self-knowledge, and the principles that give the human being access to the will powers of nature and beings outside of our realms to be able to facilitate creating our civilization. When we look at the archetypes behind our civilization, we knew that part of what we have done is to not use knowledge with the right intentions at all times. We've done a lot of the use of our powers with a deep degree of self-interest and motivated by other forces such as greed or even scarcity. And so we don't always use our technology, which part of it is the technique of knowledge, the ways of using knowledge in the way that could allow harmony, inner and outer balance, and health and well-being to be what we do and share within our environments. And so I think technologies now must require moral understanding, which means to be able to know the deeper motive of why we're doing anything we're doing, not just to do it unconsciously. We're at an age in which most of what we can do now can be done very consciously, and including utilizing aspects of the superconscious to aid us in working through these questions of our civilization.
So, technology seems to be developing and evolving in leaps and bounds. What do you see developing and evolving within individuals and humanity in conjunction with this? What new capacities or capabilities or possibilities do you see emerging for the human experience?
We've reached an age in technological complexity where we must now have a systemic understanding of our world. We're no longer isolated in any way from each other in the world because not only of technology, but because of the development of these inner processes that make us now more sensitive to each other's presence, existence, and needs in the world. And so the human being has evolved as well. We've been a certain way resisting our responsibility to that evolution by holding on to self-interest. But what is driving our technologies as well is the need to share something much more complex. And we're designing more complex technologies with the sense that they will be more responsible for our futures and we could just sit back and relax. But that is not what futures are. Futures require human beings to know, to understand, to have a certain kind of responsibility, which we can call wisdom, and truth, meaning ultimately, what are the consequences of having what we have and using what we have? There is a consequence on everything for the future. So we must take moral responsibility for the technologies and our human capacities in sharing life in such a way that what we do is deepen our coherence of our world time and to step into that time with the understanding that we cannot exclude anyone from designing a future and participating in the future that is being offered to us by being intelligences that understand our needs in some ways better than we do. This earth understands human needs, or we would not have received all of the abundance that the earth has given us. We don't understand our needs in relationship to the future. And so part of our work is to not just create technologies to make the future more efficiently accessible to us, but to make the future make ourselves more responsible for what the future wants to give to us. If we imagine that there are more kinds of powers that the human being can access, we shouldn't just put it into things, we should put it into ourselves and into a certain way our lives in a way that can allow us to meet the world. So what is evolving simultaneously with our technological age is an insight to the levels of human need that is not about the body and the mind, the way that we've been evolving our civilization and our educations, but the kind of initiation now into the level of the soul, where the soul's wisdom and the soul's truth about what our future ages can look like, particularly this age of humanity in which we must resolve the historical gaps that we have currently in consciousness based on the intellectual ages used only to create a school for what we call logic or reasoning. But we must now reintroduce the sciences of the spirit, the sciences of soul, and the deeper sciences of nature, the phenomenology and such, Goethean observation as we call it sometimes, that we can allow ourselves to participate in these realities as they prepare themselves before they come into existence. And so we are acquiring a prophetic mind, just as we are creating a systemic process for technologies to mediate the material world. But the spiritual world is still our work. And we have a task in that world as well. And so I think this is the age that's emerging. It's not to just descend further and further into submatter, but to participate more into the realms where the human wisdom can become more engaged, and the greater truths that align us into relationships can be engaged as well. And so I offer these as some reflections for this work that is being undertaken around moral technology and the responsibility to see into the futures that are ahead of us and design ways by which we could enter it with the moral responsibility for not making the same mistakes of causing change to occur without the ethics of life guiding it, and to honor what's given by nature, by the cosmos, and by each other in making a healthier and sustainable world. Thank you.
How was that for you?
It flowed well.
Very
It flowed
good.
well for me.
Yeah.
How would it